Morning, CET 116 students. I hope you're all doing well during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I hope you all are staying safe and practicing good, safe procedures these days. I'm coming to you with a little update now on subdivisions. I know you guys have been given your assignment, and hopefully you're all able to download that assignment. I know there's two pieces there in that assignment. So I'm going to ask that well, I've already asked that you guys have made copies of those. I'm not particular if you keep the color or not. I mean, it can help enhance your drawing, but you don't necessarily have to do that. So thank you for trying to get that done for me. So I know that's going to be a little bit difficult, and I'll pull up the guidelines for that assignment here in a few minutes. But I also want to talk to you a little bit about what exactly we're doing. So I am going to start with the screen share, and I'm going to share with you the guidelines of the assignment. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Title 16 subdivision regulations and how they would help you plan and actually decide how to use your space in your project. So let me go to screen share, and the first thing I'm going to share with you today is I'm going to share with you this document right here. I am going to be posting this for you out on your Blackboard here, but what I wanted to show you this is a planning tool that I came across just recently, just over here by my house. There's a subdivision being built, and well, it's already built, and what is happening now is they're starting to build lots to sell along here, and this Oak Ridge Homes Company is starting to sell these lots. But I wanted to show you how they're actually using the subdivision guide here and sort of telling how they're doing their lots. Now, I realize Oak Ridge Homes is using this map to show off the lots that they're about to sell. As you can see, they're actually building new homes in this section right here. But what I do want to pull to your attention is you're looking at your spatial relationships here and the way you were able to use the space and how they used their streets and how they've used some of the larger areas and some of the smaller areas. So in your particular guidelines, I have asked you to put together some 2-acre lots. And I don't expect you to put the bearings and distance on these, because it would be impossible to do that given both the time we have and the ability to do it accurately, with all of you not having Civil 3D. So I'm asking that you just simply draw lines on there and showing how your spatial relationships go. Now, I do realize that you're not going to be able to get this exact simply because this is exactly that, sketching. So it's about kind of using your spatial relationships. I've also asked for a few different things on your guidelines. I've asked you for how to use a place where you're going to actually put in your stormwater management. Stormwater management is something that is required on a subdivision like that, in which the municipality is saying, how are you going to handle the stormwater that comes off of this? Now, in doing stormwater management, what you would normally do is decide where to put the waters that would be contained on your subdivision. And basically the concept behind stormwater management is that you're going to do something to treat that stormwater before it actually ends into the development. So in the subdivision I've given you, or the information I've given you, there's that lower right-hand side, or the lowest part in elevation. To me, that would make good sense to use that for your subdivision regulations. So I am going to put that as something for you to think about while you guys are doing your subdivision. More will come on that in a future video. Next thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is the Title 16 of the subdivision regulations. If you will note in subdivision regulations, I talked a little bit about them earlier, and I've talked about some particular areas in it. So I'm going to refer back to Title 16 subdivisions. This information is available for you on Blackboard, and you could pull it down. It's quite a lengthy document, so I don't expect you to pull it down or make a copy of it, but it is a really good reference to use to talk about what exactly we're doing here from the engineering standpoint. Okay, first thing I'm going to talk about here is Title 16 of subdivisions. And if you notice right here, this is the page. Now, I talked about three main concepts in which this is the index. And three main concepts that Title 16 does actually deal with in the guidelines for a subdivision in Pueblo County. The first one talks about submission of what's called a sketch plan. You'll notice right here. The next one is, let's see if I can go to my tools here, and I can get out some tools here. Oh, that's all right. So now you'll notice that one talks about the sketch plan, and then the next one talks about the submission and review of preliminary plan, and then the last one talks about the final plan. My next video series is we'll talk about each of these particular ones as we go along. This first one here, I'm going to start out with what's called the sketch plan. I'm going to concentrate mainly on that. Now, a little bit about how you look at the subdivision regulations guidelines. Normally, what you'll find in any sort of law or document that sets up a set of guidelines, you'll find out that the introductory pages explain the law, probably show the actual language of the law, and then actually give you an explanation of some of the definitions of the terms that you'll see within the law. This next one talks about how you would submit and review a sketch plan, how you would submit and review the preliminary plan, and then how you would sketch and submit and review the final plan, or how the municipal agencies are going to do that. Then there's other laws that may be a deciding factor in this particular subdivision, so they're attached here also. So next thing I'm going to go to is right here where it says 16-24, which is the sketch plan requirements. So I'm looking at your drawing now more as a sketch plan, the one that I'm requiring you to do. That sketch plan is going to tell us something about it. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the sketch plan requirements. If you notice right here under the sketch plan requirements, which is 16.24, it talks about the procedures and requirements of submission. Then it talks about the drawing requirements. So I'm going to jump to that page so I can show you that information. And then I'm going to, in a future video, come back and talk to you about preliminary plan requirements. And also if you notice over here on page 9 of the subdivision and review, I also want to jump to that real quick. So if you'll be patient with me here, let me move down to page 9, and I think we're also going to go to page 31 here. So I'm going to start out by jumping down to page 9 here. And let's see where I'm at right here. Oh, there's page 9 right there. So I'm going to start out. So here is the guidelines for submission and review of a sketch plan. This tells you about the submission. One of the things I do want to call to your attention is who exactly you're giving this document to. Well, this document is actually designed to go to the governing body who would oversee this particular area, which is actually the Board of Commissioners in this particular county. So the Board of County Commissioners would look at this. Now, obviously, the commissioners aren't the experts in this. So what would happen is they would be giving it to either a county engineer or someone that would have sort of those sort of designation guide, and then they would decide who, in fact, they would be going to. So this particular set of plans talks about it going to the board. So the board would be the county commission. The next thing, if you look what happens, it talks about also here is that in particular, they've made it a point to call out the fact that procedures for standards of both sewer and water systems. Sewer and water systems is a big thing and actually is required by law that a development under 35 acres in size would have to somehow or another manage the water systems for, and possibly sewage treatments for a particular subdivision. There's a whole set of legal guidelines that go along with this that gets into a different set of governing rules. You will talk a little bit about that in your further, those of you who are civil engineers will talk more about that in your coursework as you go along. And then the next thing talks about the review of the sketch plan. Who reviews it? In this situation, it's telling you that the board would actually take this in, then they would turn it over to what they call the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's purpose is to be a little more knowledgeable about the rules and regulations of land development and planning within in the county, and they will then have a period of time to which they will look at the document, make recommendations, make sure that they've hit the high spots, and that document will actually come back and be actually sent back to the developers so they could give them the initial nod to go ahead and proceed with this subdivision and or not, or make some recommendations or changes to it. Okay, now I'm going to jump down to Title 31. Or I'm sorry, page 31. Okay, page 31. Okay, so page 31 here talks about the sketch plan requirements. Here is the preliminary requirements of the subdivision, or preliminary requirements for the submission. The next end talks about the application and how it should be applied. So it would be a developer's responsibility to put these together. I am not requiring this from you all in doing this, but I do want to show you the guidelines that would be required if you were going to do this. In this situation, you would have to put, of course, the name of your subdivision, the county. Then it would have to be the name and owner of the subdivider, and this would to make sure that the subdivider does have a license. There's a license required that you have subdivider's license. Then there is a requirement of a map. The map must have a north arrow, which show the significant both natural and man-made features on the site, and within 1/2 mile of the portion or the site around it. So they're looking on seeing how this impacts other places. Now, if you notice, I did not give you that information, but it would be a requirement. Also says here that the map should be done in a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, that the lot and street layout should be indicated with dimensions to the nearest foot. In our situation, I'm not asking for any dimensions on this map, but that would be a requirement in a sketch plan, a preliminary sketch plan. It also requires existing topo information. Notice that I've given you that. Notice here in the preliminary one, it's only asking for a 10-foot contour interval, which is fairly rough in our situation. You do have you have 2 acre data, or I'm sorry, 2-foot interval data that's provided with you. And then it would want to say how you're going to use the entire acreage of area of the parcels within a 1/2 acre. So they're trying to see how you would use the space that's set aside in your proposed subdivision, and again in this particular piece, how you're kind of talking about how you're going to use that particular area up. In the sketch plan requirements. If you notice also right here, now here are the maps requirements here. You would draw a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet. You would have a lot and street layout indicating the dimensions to the nearest foot. Again, we're not requiring that. I'm just looking for more spatial relationships. Another thing that would be required at this stage would be the soil types and whether or not your soil, the soils that you're on would be conducive to a subdivision, and whether or not you consulted the local agency for that. Then you would need a report concerning, and here this tells you about what other agencies would have to just chime in on the subdivision to know whether or not it's even would be valid for this county. Here are some of the things that they're requiring. First of all, some sort of a note about the water system, how it's proposed, and how you're going to maintain any particular water rights and historic use, and how you're going to protect the public. 2, how are you going to plan on doing sewage disposal of the developments or the lots that would go in there? 3, if there is any existing streams, lakes, what the existing topography looks and the existing vegetation, and how you're going to either deal with that or change that, and if it does meet the city's vision for a subdivision, or in this situation, county, not city. The geological characteristics, anything that's big about the lot that may in fact impact this particular lot. One of the considerations that would be big in your development here is how you would utilize or how you would handle that. There's a large ditch that runs across your property. The unfortunate part about that ditch is that is a ditch that in which there's an easement of a drainage way that goes across your property, which encumbers your property, but you cannot use that. So we would have to show that on the subdivision, and actually how we're making sure that it's all of its rights still are that it has coming to it are in consideration. So here's your drawing requirements. It talks about the scale of the drawing. I've actually asked you to do your drawing in a scale of 1 inch equals 200 feet because we could not get 1 inch 100 feet on something that I felt you guys could plot out. Also, it says here that the drawing should be 24 by 36, and obviously we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to do 2 8.5 by 11 by 8.5 drawings, in which I would have you submit the north section and the south section, but they should correspond with each other. Here are the preliminary plan requirements. Now, the preliminary plan requirements, we're going to go on at the next video, in which I'll talk about some of the engineering properties of your particular subdivision. But for now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the drawing requirements, how we're trying to do your drawing that you're working on. So basically what I'm looking at here is how you would use your space, how you would use that spatial relationships. Hopefully you're taking into consideration your contours, the existing roadways, and how you're going to lay this out in compliance with the rules I gave you, which is also making sure that you accommodating a park. I asked that you put a park in there, and obviously you'd want to put a park in there as a result of a place where it could be used by the people within the development. So obviously putting a park in a place that would be dangerous or maybe not acceptable would be a consideration that the county commission would make. Also, what is the reason for that would be to give that feeling of community. So maybe that park wouldn't best be suited in certain particular places. But I do want you to consider those and show how you're going to use all of the criterion within your development. So therefore, this is Professor Minczuk. I'm going to chime out for today. Hopefully this is giving you some guidelines on working on your project as you move forward. Some of you may be doing one of these, oh crap, I wish I would have known that sooner thing, but I expect for this to be a working document. That's why I've given you the amount of time to be working on it. So words of advice, maybe print this out, do a rough one, and then move it to a final one after you've worked upon this. But it's going to take a while for you to do this. Anyway, once again, chiming out, wishing you all safe. And I will be talking to you via email this week. So thank you, and stay safe. I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to end our session.